Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spinner Rack, and today I'm going to do a video about some of my magazines. Now, 1986 was a great year for comic books. We had the Watchmen, we had the Dark Knight, but then we look over at Marvel. Marvel had the big money successes. They had the X-Men, they had Punisher going on. I think the Fantastic Four was still rolling with John Byrne. They obviously had, I think, Secret Wars 2, even though it's not as well liked as the first miniseries. It was pretty big for them. But they also had another hit. And one of the hits that should have got them into the history books, with the same with the Dark Knight and the Watchmen, was the Nam, right? So this was Marvel. They already had a G.I. Joe comic book, but the G.I. Joe was more like, had some of the Marvel dynamics. When when Marvel decided to do the Nam, this was almost a straightforward Warburg, almost like some of the stuff you'd see at EC or at Warren, that sort of thing. So ultimately, the success led to also have a black and white magazine, and this is what I'm going to show you. I'm going to do a series of videos going through these black and white magazines, but this is lesser known. I don't think I mean, people is probably known more for the art, for Michael Golden's art, but not for the fact that at this point, when these stories was coming on, they were done very serious. It wasn't like the rest of the Marvel stuff, and I think since it was a series and not a mini series, when it got to like 80 something, and the Punisher showed up, that's when people called foul, and it was a race or not really noticing the history books. But at the time, the first 13 issues, that's some classic stuff. It was a success, and it was pretty much up there with the Dark Knight. But this was straight serious, where the Dark Knight and Watchmen kind of takes the form and tries to invert it. This utilizes the form to do war comics, which we used to have. We used to have Two-Fisted Tales, stuff like that. Stuff like you said in EC Comics, as I said before. But you said to yourself, why do I have Savage Tales here in front of these three Nam books? Now, the Nam started out in Savage Tales, and this is the first printing. There was actually a black and white series called Savage Tales, and they had a story by Doug Murray and Michael Golden. Now, Michael Golden did this cover. It's a painted cover. If you look at the cover, you're like, all right, this is kind of jokey. This might be in the realm of, what was it, Vampirella? And obviously the next cover you see behind it. But let's go through this. Right? So here you have Jim Shooter. You have Larry Hama, who also did G.I. Joe as the editor. He also had a background in the military, I believe. Also, Michael Golden did the cover. They say it probably was some sort of airbrush or painting. I'm not sure, but it's very cool. Other noteworthy things, obviously, the title of this is not the Nam. You see, the original title was Fifth to the First, right? By Doug Murray and Michael Golden. There's also a good story by Herb Trimpe, The Sky Warriors, Marla. They also have Avengers, that's done by Archie Goodwin and John Severin. They have also a great moral story, but you should also check all of these stories in here, right? It's a very good book. Then you have the editorial space filler with a note from Larry Hama, and you also have a little background on all the creators. So you can go through to get this book, you can read about them, you'll have all their names, all the information. You have this in the video. Now we're introduced to them Fifth to the First, right? By Doug Murray. This is the first Nam story, the Nam and the date, right? That's the actual title of the story, not the title of the comic book, right? And basically it introduces these characters. And when I get to the end of this video, I will do another footnote on these characters. And I introduce the entire people that's in their platoon. Now this would be possibly even more realistic than Apocalypse Now or Platoon. Like, this is just straightforward army, war is hell's type stories. And you see this setup here on the page, giving you the map of the location. You don't have any dialogue, so it's almost like an adult comic book, that sort of thing. So when you look at this, you're like, oh, there's no dialogue, but then they have these descriptions. In the descriptions, the lettering is almost like someone's writing a letter home, and that's one of the cool things about it. So you're introduced to this platoon. There's what's the name? It's Roger Young, who's an officer. You have their Sarge, which is Rich Heidel. We also have Emil Pauli, who's the doctor, called Croker. We have Garland Bremme, who's the streetwise kid, who's a pickle in the battle, and let's see, a rock and a pickle. That's how they say it. We have Sean Hogan and John Duff. They're experimenting in drugs. They call Heads and Fats. And as you get into the story after this introduction, no thing to fall back on to hear how they sound. They just have Michael Golden, sort of giving you the emotion of the character, having, whereas Roger Young seems like, obviously, sort of our Captain America here. You have the Sarge, and you have, also this feel of what's going on behind them, giving you this feel that is bigger than what we see. And as they go to the story and they enter, they're traveling, it's obviously like a really nice, cool setup. You see these helicopters, and this will be throughout the story. These helicopters taking them to different locations. And this kind of just really sort of feeling like a movie, right? But they introduced to a new character who's called Santos. And he is sort of a gung-ho person who's a Puerto Rican kid who's kind of gung-ho. Oh, that's the other thing I missed here that I want to go over. It's sort of the tagline for the series. All in all, this isn't Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos. No heroes here. And this will be what the story is sort of about. They have this gung-ho character who's Santos. They're in there, and then of course, Charlie, there's a tripwire here. If you can see it, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a tripwire. The Vietnamese, they trip over it. They're able to, hold them off. And then next thing you know, they're on their travels. Santos did good, so they kind of put him as sort of, had him going up in front. I believe that's what's going on here. But then they kind of get ambushed. They got tricked into going into an area where they're kind of pinned. You see them getting the gunfire, and you see how we have some of the effects you'd see that's in a lot of some of the other comic books would utilize, not having captions, but in the gutter having the dialogue. But it's still using this type, so it's sort of like a letter. It's still like a sort of a letter sort of thing, which works in comic books, having this letter and just having the emotion of the artwork be there too. So they're being ambushed, they're in trouble. They shoot this round and it gets stuck in the wall, doesn't explode. And then Santos gets up, he goes at it, he gets hit a number of times, and he falls on the round. It explodes the hut with the gun, and then Sarge takes out the other hut that has that. And they basically talk about what happened, and that Santos possibly getting the Congressional Medal of Honor. And then he said, remember what he said in the earlier part? He said, now he says, like I said, I don't know what makes a hero, but I knew one once. So, and then on your own, you're looking at this, you have to go look at this Herb Trimpe Sky Warrior story. It's a very nice story. I wanted to stick to the nom. I'm just going to quickly show you. You're having Michael Golden, who's kind of doing his EC comics. He has some, I guess Michael Golden has a lot of Frank Frazetta in him, but in this, it kind of feels like he's got the mad artists with their serious work. So you have some Wally Wood, you have with the lighting, you have some Jack Davis with the characterization of these characters, and you have a little with the cartooniness of Harvey Kurtzman. So that's the first story, and I bought this much later. I bought this much later. So, I'm going to keep going. Right. We have Savage Tales. And this other Savage Tale, number 4. That was number 1. This is number 4. This is more Good Girl on the Vampirella. Good Girl Art by Joe Jusko. And this has another story, which is 5th to the 1st, The Snipers. Now, you notice Nam isn't used in the title for that one. So this was the original title. It has another story by Herb Trimpe. We got, I guess, would that be Chuck Dixon who's working with John Severance? That'd be interesting to find out. James O'Barr. You got Bill Ray. This is a book you have to get. Doug Murray also does another story in here. So, and Art Nichols, who's inking a lot of the Justice League stuff. And then, of course, you catch up with the letter page. And this one, which looks like it's set in nighttime, it's called The Sniper, right? So, basically, this story, this is another letter, and they talk about military intelligence. And that the military intelligence said that this place was completely pacified, but at the same time, these what is it? What is this? Was it Marines? Yeah, these Green Marines, they got stuck, so this platoon has to go out. And this one time, you don't really get to see much of Platoon. It's just sort of a mood piece. Right? You see the helicopters going, you see them go over the landscapes, you see them land, you see the Marines that are here. Someone gets hit, someone gets shot, and the next thing you know, this guy, I think it's Young, he's not actually dead, but the pilot is dead. They start shooting, they shoot to try to figure out where the sniper is. They all get out. They're trying to figure out. They're trying to take out the sniper. Then the Sarge goes out. He's looking around. There he goes. He sees something, and he finds out that it was a little girl who was a sniper. And then I got a little sister about that age. That's what war is like, you know. Like I said, there ain't no such thing as military intelligence because wars don't make no sense at all, right? And then, of course, we have the Herb Trimpe story. So this will be the end of my video on that. And now you get to see the next issues. I'll probably try to do one issue, but every issue has every issue has 2 stories. And I guess I'll give you one tidbit, which I'll repeat in the next video. The cast from the 5th to the 1st is not the same cast that's in the NAM. These ones probably went out, not many people knew it. But when the NAM came out, it was huge. It was very successful. It was like one of those titles that beats the X-Men for a couple months. Then X-Men takes it back. Then the X-Men borrows some stuff from it. But I think Forge had a connection to the Vietnam War, and they kind of played that out. So, there you go. We are starting our video on the NAM magazine. You got to see the 5th to the 1st, 2 great black and white stories, originally presented in black and white. And then we have the NAM magazine, which is like the Savage Sword of Conan, but these are reprints, but done in all black and white. And I will get into those and get some definite cool stuff in here. And they possibly, yes, definitely. But you'll see Michael Golden's art within the monthly grind has a shift, which this is what you have to expect from an artist doing the monthly grind. It's going to be a shift, but this is what you got to look forward to. Spinner Rack out.